The colony of Valnor 7 was a shining example of intergalactic cooperation. Its towering cities sprawled across lush green landscapes that were home to dozens of alien species, each with their own unique cultures and technologies. The atmosphere hummed with progress and prosperity until the outbreak began. It started as a small cluster of illness in one corner of the colony, but within hours it spread like wildfire. The pathogen was vicious. It hit with incredible speed. Each alien species reacted differently. Some were more vulnerable than others, but all were affected. No one was prepared for what followed. The alien healers were some of the best in the galaxy. Their technology was cutting edge, and their knowledge of biology was unparalleled. But even they were struggling. The disease didn't seem to obey the rules. Their usual treatments failed one by one, and the healers found themselves overwhelmed. Panic began to ripple through the colony as more and more beings fell ill. While their healing methods proved ineffective, the healers could only stand helplessly by watching the casualties pile up. It was in the midst of this chaos that the humans arrived. They had been contacted by the colony's council to assist, but the alien healers were skeptical, to say the least. They knew of humans only by reputation. Their species was seen as unrefined at best, with a history of relying on brute force and improvisation rather than the careful precision that defined alien medical practices. Many of the healers even whispered among themselves that humans were too reckless to be of any use here. As the human medical team stepped off their transport ship, they were met with the cold stares of alien healers who had been working tirelessly for days without success. The humans didn't look like much to the healers. They were small and compact by comparison. Their clothing was simple and their equipment seemed rudimentary, like something out of an ancient Earth clinic. They didn't carry the sleek instruments that the healers were accustomed to. Instead, they'd brought basic medical kits and what seemed to be an assortment of first aid tools. The healers couldn't fathom how these so-called experts would be able to help. The human leader, a calm and composed woman named Elena Stone, looked at the scene before her. Her expression was unreadable, but her eyes were sharp. She took in the chaos, the dozens of patients lying in makeshift beds connected to tubes and devices, some still conscious, and others barely hanging on. She didn't waste time with pleasantries. Instead, she addressed the head of the alien healers directly. "Show us where we can help," she said, her voice steady but firm. The alien healer in charge, a tall being with 3 eyes and pale blue skin, hesitated for a moment, his mouth opening, as if to say something, but he faltered instead. He gestured toward a nearby group of patients, where a dozen beings lay suffering in varying states of distress. The humans immediately moved into action without hesitation. They set down their bags and began to work. The aliens watched with confusion and growing unease. Stone stepped up to a patient, an alien species with multiple limbs and bioluminescent skin. She quickly checked its vital signs, using nothing more than a stethoscope, and her hand she called for an intravenous drip, and another human healer rushed over with the supplies. They began stabilizing the alien's heart rate and regulating its oxygen levels. The alien healers exchanged uncertain glances. They had expected the humans to fail immediately, to fumble their way through the process, but instead, the humans were working with an uncanny efficiency that left the aliens in stunned silence. The first signs of hope began to rise as the human team worked in harmony. They didn't wait for advanced scans or theoretical models. They acted on instinct and the basic knowledge of what worked under pressure. The alien healers could only watch as the humans saved the life of their first patient and stabilized another. Within minutes, the difference was clear. The humans were fast and effective in ways the alien healers hadn't anticipated. The alien healers watched as the humans continued to work. Their methods were unlike anything the aliens had ever seen. Instead of carefully assessing the situation with long diagnostic procedures, the humans seemed to make snap decisions without hesitation. Each action was fast and direct. They moved from one patient to the next without waiting for a full analysis of their condition. They just acted without a moment's thought. The healers could hardly believe it as they observed Stone stabilize yet another patient, this one a Xerthian whose fragile biology was considered one of the most difficult to treat. Any minor error could result in immediate death. Yet the humans handled the creature with what seemed like reckless abandon. Their tools were crude compared to the alien technology. In the room they had no advanced bioscanners, no nanobots, no precision instruments. Yet they were achieving results where the healers had failed. The alien healers gathered in small groups to discuss what was happening. Some were frustrated, others were amazed. A few of the more experienced healers began to feel a growing unease, something they couldn't put their finger on that felt deeply as the humans continued to save lives. They couldn't deny the effectiveness of the human methods, but that didn't mean they liked it. The head healer, a tall alien with 6 arms named Gareth, paced back and forth. The humans' methods went against everything he knew about medicine. His species had spent centuries perfecting their treatments. Each step was calculated, every decision based on years of research and technology. The idea of acting without knowing every detail was alien to him. It felt wrong and dangerous. "How can they be so reckless?" Gareth muttered to a colleague. "They don't even understand the full scope of the problem, yet they jump into treatment without hesitation. It's madness." His colleague, a younger healer named Irina, nodded slowly. She had been watching the humans work with growing admiration. She had seen the humans treat wounds that had seemed impossible to heal. Their hands moved swiftly and efficiently, even when faced with unexpected complications. "I don't know, Gareth," she said quietly, "but they're saving lives faster than we can." Gareth stopped pacing and looked at her. "But they're doing it without care. They're not analyzing every detail. They're not calculating the risks. What if they make a mistake? What if they make things worse?" "They're not afraid to make mistakes," Irina said. "They just keep moving forward and fix what they can. They don't let the fear of failure stop them." Gareth's mind raced with the implications of her words. Humans were working on instinct, not technology. They weren't relying on their equipment or their intellect. They were just doing what needed to be done. And in doing so, they were saving lives faster than anyone had anticipated. It was maddening yet undeniable. As Tristone moved from one patient to another, her team worked in perfect sync, their hands steady as they applied quick first aid bandages, stopped bleeding, adjusted oxygen levels. Each action was decisive, their focus unwavering. The alien healers were torn between awe and fear. They were watching a different kind of medicine at work, a medicine that didn't rely on perfect knowledge or advanced tools, but on pure human will to act and adapt under pressure. There was no hesitation, no waiting for the perfect answer, just action, and a willingness to accept whatever risks came with it. Gareth and the others could only watch in silence as the humans moved through the chaos with efficiency and speed. No one had ever dared to treat an emergency with such raw energy, and that energy was starting to make all the difference. As the humans continued to move through the emergency ward, the alien healers began to question everything they knew about medicine. The humans didn't rely on careful analysis or high-tech machines. They didn't wait for the results of scans or the perfect treatment plan. Instead, they focused on the immediate needs of the patient and worked with what was available. Their hands moved quickly and decisively, each action aimed at keeping the patient alive long enough to stabilize them for the next phase of treatment. Gareth stood to the side, observing the humans with growing concern. His thoughts were a whirlwind. How could they make these decisions so quickly? What if they were wrong? What if they missed something important? He watched as Tristone worked on a Xerthian, whose multiple limbs had become paralyzed from the disease. She quickly administered a sedative, and then began manually manipulating the Xerthian's body, stretching its limbs carefully to relieve pressure on its joints. The alien healer had no idea how she could do this so confidently without detailed scans to guide her movements. But it was working. The Xerthian began to breathe more evenly. Its limbs began to relax. The pale glow that marked its body began to return to a healthy brightness. Gareth couldn't deny it. They were saving the Xerthian's life right before his eyes, yet they were doing so with a method that seemed almost barbaric in comparison to their own technology. As Tristone continued to work, she glanced up at Gareth and saw his gaze locked on her. She gave him a small nod and said, "We don't have time for perfection. We only have time to save lives. If we wait for everything to be just right, we'll lose them all." Gareth felt a chill run down his spine at her words. She was right, and that realization shook him to his core. How many lives had they lost waiting for the perfect solution? How many opportunities had they missed because they were too focused on doing things the right way? Irina walked up beside Gareth. She had been watching the humans work for hours now, and the admiration in her eyes was evident. "It's incredible," she said softly. "They don't hesitate, they don't second-guess themselves, they just act, and they're saving lives faster than we could have imagined." Gareth looked at her, and then back at the humans moving through the ward. They were so different from the way he had been trained his entire life. They didn't have the precision or the technology, but they had something else, something he couldn't quite define. It wasn't skill or knowledge. It was something deeper, something more primal, a drive to save lives. No matter what, the human doctors didn't make decisions based on data alone. They made them based on instinct, on what they could see and feel in the moment. They didn't have the luxury of time or the ability to plan out every move, but they had a relentless determination to save every life they could, and in that determination they were succeeding where the alien healers had failed. Gareth felt a heavy weight on his shoulders as he watched the humans move with purpose and resolve. Each patient they saved was another blow to his understanding of what medicine should be. He couldn't help but wonder how long his species had been bound by the chains of their own perfectionism. How much suffering had they caused by refusing to act without complete certainty? As the last of the Xerthians stabilized and the humans moved on to the next patient, Gareth found himself standing still, unable to tear his eyes away from the efficiency and the raw energy of human medicine. He had always believed that technology and precision were the keys to healing, but the humans were showing him a different truth, a truth he wasn't sure he was ready to accept. As the days passed, the tension between the human and alien healers began to escalate. While the humans continued to save lives at an incredible pace, the alien healers found themselves growing more and more frustrated. Their precision methods had failed time and time again, but they couldn't bring themselves to abandon their traditional ways to adopt the chaotic and unrefined human approach. Gareth paced back and forth in the medical bay. His mind was in turmoil. The humans had saved so many lives, but at what cost? They were acting so quickly, making decisions with barely a moment's thought. What if they made a mistake? What if their actions had unforeseen consequences? He couldn't shake the thought that their methods were too reckless and dangerous. Irina stood at the window watching as the humans worked with calm efficiency. She had seen the same results that Gareth had seen, but something about the human way of healing fascinated her. She had never seen healers act so decisively. They didn't wait for perfect conditions. They just did what needed to be done in the moment without hesitation. It was messy, but it was effective, and it was saving lives faster than anyone could have imagined. "Gareth, you can't deny it. They're saving lives," she said quietly. "Look at what they've done in such a short time. We failed, and they've succeeded. Maybe we've been too focused on doing things perfectly. Maybe we need to rethink our approach." Gareth turned to her sharply. "You think we should just throw away everything we know about medicine, all of our technology and training, just to act like them? Do you have any idea how dangerous that is?" Irina's eyes softened. "I'm not saying we should abandon everything, but we need to be willing to adapt. We can't let our fear of imperfection stop us from helping those who need it most. The humans are showing us a new way, a way that might save more lives in situations like this." Gareth shook his head. His instincts were telling him that the human way was a mistake, that it was too reckless to be sustainable. But as he watched the humans move from patient to patient without hesitation, he felt a growing doubt in his mind. What if Irina was right? What if their obsession with perfection was costing lives? Later that day, a new crisis emerged. The pathogen had mutated again, and the new strain was even more aggressive than the first. Alien healers scrambled to adjust their methods, but nothing seemed to work. The disease spread faster than they could treat it, and soon the medical bays were overflowing with patients in critical condition. The humans were the only ones still making progress. Terstone called for an emergency meeting with Gareth and the other lead healers. "We need to act fast. The new strain is moving quicker than we anticipated. We can't waste time with our usual methods. We need to combine our strengths." Gareth hesitated. "You want us to abandon our protocols and work with you in your chaotic way?" Terstone's eyes locked with his. It's not about chaos, it's about survival. If we wait for perfect conditions, we'll lose everyone. We need to act quickly and without hesitation. Gareth felt a sense of dread wash over him, but there was no time left for pride or tradition. The situation was dire, and he knew that if they didn't make a change, they would lose more lives than they already had. "Fine," Gareth said reluctantly. "We'll work together, but we do it my way when we can, and your way when we have no other choice." Stone nodded. Deal. The conflict was not over, but for the first time Gareth felt a sense of acceptance. Maybe their two approaches weren't so different after all. In the end, it was about saving lives, and they needed every tool they could find to do that. The new strain of the pathogen had spread like wildfire across Valnor 7, and the alien healers were reaching their breaking point. They had never faced a situation like this before. Their methods, which had worked for centuries, were failing them. The humans, though, were continuing to make progress. Despite the odds, their quick thinking and action were turning the tide, one patient at a time. Gareth stood in the back of the medical bay, watching as the humans moved swiftly between patients. His mind was a whirlpool of conflicting thoughts. He could see the progress they were making, and yet he still couldn't fully trust their methods. There was something unsettling about how they worked with such urgency, but it was undeniable. They were saving lives faster than anyone had expected. Stone moved toward him as she finished stabilizing another patient. Her face was tense, but determined. "Gareth, we need to move faster. We need to get ahead of this before it spreads any further." Her voice was firm, but there was an edge of concern in it that he hadn't heard before. "You think I don't know that?" he snapped. "I've seen how quickly this disease spreads. I know what's at stake, but I can't just throw away everything I know about medicine." Stone looked at him for a long moment before replying. "I'm not asking you to throw away your knowledge. I'm asking you to trust us. Trust that our way works in situations like this. We can't be bound by rules that don't apply anymore. We need to adapt." Gareth's thoughts were racing. He had spent his entire life believing in the precision of his species' healing techniques. He had believed that everything could be fixed if they just had the right data, the right technology. But the humans were showing him something else, something he hadn't been able to accept until now. They weren't relying on perfect data or precision. They were relying on their ability to act quickly and adapt to the situation. They weren't waiting for the disease to follow a predictable path. They were moving ahead of it, taking the fight to the pathogen, rather than waiting for it to make the next move. It was an alien concept to Gareth, yet as he watched the humans save patient after patient, he realized that maybe this was the only way to handle such a crisis. He could feel the weight of his own hesitation, the fear of making mistakes, but the humans didn't let fear control them. They acted in the moment, and that was what made them so effective. "Fine," he said after a long pause. "We'll follow your lead for now, but you must promise me that we'll combine our methods when possible. We'll use the technology and precision where it's needed." Stone's expression softened. "I promise, Gareth. This isn't about one approach being better than the other. It's about saving lives. We'll work together on this." For the first time, Gareth saw the full picture. He saw how the humans weren't abandoning their knowledge. They were using it in a new way. They were combining their instincts with their training, and that was what was making the difference. The following hours were a blur as the teams worked together at a feverish pace. Gareth found himself working alongside the humans, using their methods alongside his own technology. They acted in tandem, moving between patients without hesitation. Where once he had feared the human way, he now saw it as a valuable complement to his own approach. When the new strain finally began to slow its progress, Gareth felt a sense of relief flood through him, but it was a mixed relief. Part of him still couldn't fully accept the idea that the human approach was just as effective as his own, but the evidence was right there in front of him. The combined effort of both methods had saved hundreds of lives in a matter of days. The progress was undeniable. The humans and the alien healers had worked side by side, and the tide of the disease was starting to turn. But it was clear that the work wasn't done yet. While the pathogen spread had slowed, the damage was already widespread, and there were still thousands in critical condition. The combined efforts of both the humans and aliens had saved many, but it wasn't enough. They needed to keep moving forward, to continue adapting. Gareth stood by the window of the medical bay, his eyes scanning the makeshift hospital where patients lay connected to various devices. The machines beeped and hummed, but it was the humans who seemed to be doing the most good. They were working tirelessly, their energy relentless as they moved from patient to patient, and yet Gareth could see the toll it was taking on them. Their exhaustion was beginning to show despite their resilience. He could see the cracks forming. Stone walked up beside him and looked out over the ward. Her face was drawn, but there was a fierce determination in her eyes. "We can't stop now, Gareth. We've made progress, but it's not enough. We need to push harder. We need to keep adapting," she said, her voice low but full of urgency. Gareth turned to her, his eyes dark with fatigue. "I know, but I can't keep going like this. We need to find a way to help the humans help themselves. They're burning out." Stone nodded, her expression softening. "I know it's not easy. I've seen it too. The humans are giving everything they have, but even they can't keep up at this pace forever." "Then what do we do?" Gareth asked, his voice filled with frustration. "We can't keep relying on them like this. They're not equipped for this kind of pressure." "We'll do what we do best," Stone said with a grim smile. "We adapt, we innovate. We find a way to support the humans in a way that works for both of us. We can't afford to let them burn out. We need to find a balance." As the days passed, the tension between the two groups began to shift. Gareth and the others began to accept the value of the human methods, not as a replacement for their own, but as a supplement, and slowly the alien healers began to adjust their approach, taking the lessons they had learned from the humans and applying them to their own practices. The humans, for their part, began to share their knowledge of improvisation and speed with the healers, teaching them how to work faster and more effectively without compromising the care they provided. But despite the progress, there were still many who resisted the change. Some healers remained firm in their belief that the human way was too reckless and dangerous, and they refused to adopt any of the new techniques. Others grew impatient with the slow pace of integration. They wanted results faster, but Gareth knew better than anyone that change didn't happen overnight. The real breakthrough came when the humans and the aliens began to collaborate on a new treatment protocol. It combined the best of both worlds, the speed and adaptability of the humans with the precision and technology of the alien healers. The protocol allowed them to act quickly while also minimizing the risks of complications, and the results were immediate. Patients began recovering at a much faster rate, and the death toll slowed significantly. Gareth watched as the collaboration continued to evolve. It wasn't perfect. There were still bumps along the way, but the results were undeniable. They had found a way to work together that maximized their strengths and minimized their weaknesses. They were no longer two opposing forces, but a united front against a common enemy. As the days wore on, Gareth found himself feeling a sense of pride. He had once believed that his species' methods were the only way to heal, but now he understood that sometimes the best way forward wasn't through rigidity, but through the willingness to adapt to change, to learn from others, and to embrace the unknown. The days had blurred together as the battle against the pathogen raged on, but there was a shift in the air. Gareth could feel it. The tension that had once been so thick between the human and alien healers was beginning to dissipate like a storm passing through the sky. They were no longer working as separate factions, but as a united front, each group learning from the other, adapting and evolving in ways that would have been unimaginable just a few weeks ago. Gareth watched as Stone moved quickly between patients, her movements a blend of urgency and precision. The humans had begun to embrace the alien technology and adapt it to their methods, while the alien healers had started incorporating more instinctive actions into their work. They were no longer operating as if the disease could be controlled by data alone. Sometimes the unpredictable nature of the human way was exactly what was needed in a situation this volatile. Irina stood beside Gareth, her arms crossed as she observed the scene unfolding in front of them. "You can see it, can't you?" she said quietly. "The humans are no longer just a force of chaos. They've learned from us, and we've learned from them." Gareth nodded, but his expression was still guarded. "I still don't trust their approach entirely," he said, his voice low. "They act too quickly without enough information. They're too willing to gamble with lives." "We've seen the results, Gareth." Irina replied, her tone soft but firm. "They've saved hundreds of lives by acting when we hesitated, by trusting their instincts instead of waiting for perfect data." Gareth sighed deeply, running a hand through his hair. I know, it's just that the way they work goes against everything I've been trained to believe. It feels like abandoning everything we've worked for." Irina turned to face him. "Sometimes we have to abandon the things we believe to be true in order to save lives, Gareth. Maybe this is one of those times." Gareth didn't answer right away. His mind was full of conflicting thoughts. He had spent years perfecting his species' methods, and now here were these humans with their quick decisions and unshakable faith in their own instincts, showing that maybe there was more to healing than what he had learned. As he watched Stone lead a team of humans and aliens in a delicate procedure, he could see the respect in her eyes for both the alien methods and the human instincts. She was beginning to bridge the gap between their worlds, and Gareth had to admit that it was working. Patients were recovering faster than they had in previous weeks, and the strain of the disease was finally starting to lessen. By the time the next crisis hit, Gareth had started to view the humans not as a hindrance, but as allies in a way he had never expected to see them. The new strain was more aggressive than before, but the healers were ready. They had developed a new protocol based on the lessons they had learned from each other, and this time Gareth could feel the difference in their approach. It wasn't perfect, but it was better than anything they could have done alone. Stone turned to Gareth after the procedure was completed, exhaustion evident on her face, but there was also a glimmer of hope in her eyes. "We did it," she said quietly. "We did it together." Gareth nodded, his mind finally at peace with the new path they had forged together. "Yes, we did," he said, the words coming more easily than he expected. He no longer felt the need to hold on to the old ways of thinking. He could see now that the future of healing was not about being right or perfect. It was about collaboration and adaptability. The healing process was far from over, but the crisis had brought them closer than either side had anticipated. They were no longer two separate species. They were a united force, and that unity would carry them forward into the next stage of their journey. The medical bay was quieter now. The chaos had slowed, but the work was far from over. Gareth stood by the door watching as humans and aliens continued to work together. There was a harmony now that had not existed before. Each team moved fluidly through the ward, communicating without words, yet knowing exactly what needed to be done. It was the result of days of hard work and painful compromise, but it was a success. They had done it. They had found a way to balance both approaches to healing. Gareth had never imagined that it would be possible to blend his species' methods with the humans' unorthodox techniques, but he had been wrong. The human instinct to act quickly and decisively had proven invaluable in a crisis, but what had truly made the difference was their willingness to learn from each other, to adjust and innovate when necessary. Stone approached him with a tired but satisfied smile. "I think we've done it, Gareth," she said, her voice steady despite the exhaustion etched on her face. "We've created a new way to heal, a way that combines the best of both our worlds." Gareth turned to her and nodded. For the first time, he didn't feel the weight of doubt that had once consumed him. He had seen firsthand how the human approach had saved lives, and how their collaboration with the aliens had made everything more efficient. He had learned that there was strength in flexibility, and that sometimes it was better to act with urgency than to wait for perfection. "It's not perfect," Gareth said quietly, "but it's better than what we had before." His eyes scanned the room, watching as a young human healer quickly adjusted a patient's oxygen levels, while an alien colleague monitored the data on a nearby screen. The teamwork was seamless. "Nothing is ever perfect," Stone replied, "but what we've done here is something special. We found a way to save lives faster, while still respecting the importance of precision and care." She paused, looking at him. "We've shown that there's more than one way to heal." The words hit Gareth with unexpected force. He had spent so much of his life believing in the superiority of his people's methods, but in this crisis he had seen the value of the human way, the willingness to act quickly in the face of uncertainty, the ability to adapt on the fly, and the dedication to saving lives, no matter the cost. As the days passed and the final patients were stabilized, Gareth found himself reflecting on everything that had happened. The crisis had forced them all to confront their limitations and their fears, but it had also opened their eyes to the possibility of something new, a new way of healing that could save more lives than either species could have imagined on its own. Stone came up to him again, this time with a datapad in hand. "Gareth, we've made a breakthrough. We've gathered enough information to create a new protocol that combines our methods and your technology. We'll be able to treat more patients in less time with fewer complications." He looked at the datapad and then at the work around him. The ward was full of life and energy. People were recovering, and the medical staff was more united than ever before. "I never thought I would see the day where our methods could coexist," he said softly, "but I'm glad it's here." Stone smiled. "Me too," she said, and for the first time Gareth truly believed it. They had found a new way forward, and it was one that embraced the strengths of both species. Their strengths were not in opposition, they were complementary, and together they would change the future of healing.